Kenya's contemporary history cannot be complete without the mention of HEZEKIAH Ochuka. In brief, HEZEKIAH Ochuka is alleged to have ruled Kenya for 6 hours. If that is true, then Trump is doing what Moi did. Trump is coming back after 4 years. Moi came back after 6 hours. Remember, this is on assumption that Ochuka ruled Kenya for 6 hours. Who is Ochuka? He was born Hezekiah Rabala Ochuka on 23rd July 1953 in Nyakach. He attended Naki Kabete Primary. Do not mistake it with Kabete on the border of Nairobi and Kiambu. We have Luanda in Bunyore and we have Luanda in Angola. So he attended Naki Kabete Primary School and he went to Mirogi Secondary School. Nobody talks of what he got in his secondary examination, but we can make conclusions. The first conclusion is he was at Mirogi Secondary School. In those years, getting a Division 1, which is equivalent to today's A, and getting a Division 2, which is today's B, one would have to come from those big schools. We had schools where you find that, okay, let me give an example of 1979 when I did my Form 4. It was said in the newspapers that 1,000 students have gotten Division 1, which is an A. And I imagined myself, I said, if we have 1,000 clever people, would I be among them in Kenya? I said no, so I knew I was not in Division 1 or an A. So, in those years, when you got a Division 1 or a Division 2, which is equivalent to today's A and B, you'd be from a very known school. Or, even if you are not from a known school, because it used to happen, it would be advertised everywhere. It would say, this school, since the year such and such and thing, so and so got an A or a B, a Division 1 or a Division 2, and since then, we never had, or we have only had 3 or 4 people. So if he would have gotten a Division 1 or a Division 2, that is an A or a B, it would be news. And he joined the military. If he would have gotten a Division 1 or 2, or in today's terms, an A or an B, he would have joined the military as a cadet officer. But he joined as a recruit, which shows that he either got a Division 3, which is equivalent to a C, or a Division 4, which is equivalent to a D, or he failed. Now, nowadays, if you fail, you still get a certificate. But during our time, if you failed, you who did the exam and failed, and he who registered but was nowhere to be seen on the exam day, there was only one way of proving that you have been up to Form 4. Production of a secondary school leaving certificate. So from here we can assume either he got a C a D or a school leaving certificate. That is Division 3, Division 4, or a school leaving certificate. But if you look at the way he performed and the offices he was given in the Kenya Air Force, you can easily conclude that he got a Division 3, which is equivalent to today's C. So, on 14th September 1976, he joined the military in Mombasa. Those were the days when it was recommended that you be recruited from your home county, or as districts are known then, or if you're not recruited from your home district, you can, in fact, you can be taken in any other districts. I know of some people, one of them was called Darlington Juma, was in my class. These are the people who they would try to be recruited in Kapenguria. They failed to be recruited in Kapenguria. They would go to Kitale, Trans Nzoia, and they would go to Bungoma. From Bungoma, they would. It used to be a certain day, Kapenguria. The following day, the recruiting team goes to Kitale. The following day, goes to Bungoma, Kakamega, then to Eldoret. So they used to allow that, but this nowadays, it is almost impossible for you to be recruited in any other place apart from what is written on your identification card. So he was employed in Mombasa, joined the military, and then went for training. Those days, be they recruit, be they cadet officers, all of them used to be recruited at a place called AFTC, Armed Forces Training College. Today, AFTC is divided into two, whereby Recruit Training School is in Eldoret, and cadet military, it's called a military academy. Yeah, KMA, Kenya Military Academy, is still in Lanet. So he went to Lanet when it was still called Armed Forces Memorial Hospital, and upon completion of the course, he joined the Kenya Air Force. It was almost immediately after he had completed that he was assigned the work of electrical devices and instrument operating. He was assigned, that was his duties, and his place of work was in aircraft hangars and aircraft bays. Between 30th October 1978 and 21st January 1980 is where he was stationed there. I remember he also went for a training course in Britain. So he came back and was working in Isli. By then it used to be called Isli Air Base. But when the time came for Moirization of everything, every place has to be called Moi Girls, Moi University. Isli Air Base was changed to be called Moi Air Base. With his hard work, he was promoted to the rank of senior private. Now, I need to explain this thing about senior private. We have changes in ranks. We have changes in ranks. Just like in the police service, we used to have sub-inspector. We don't have a sub-inspector. We used to have assistant superintendent, which was cancelled in 1968, 68 to 70, somewhere there. But it was recently reinstated. Now we don't have sub-inspector, but we have an assistant. So we have in the discipline forces, some ranks are created, some ranks are removed. That way. So previously, in the Kenya Air Force, we had somebody called private. And so did we have in the Kenya Army and in the Kenya Navy. Now in the Kenya Air Force, you'd be promoted from private to senior private. You'd be promoted from private to senior private. And then later you'd be promoted to corporal. But in the military, in the army, not military, in the army, there was the rank of private, and then there was the rank of lance corporal. Lance corporal had a chevron, one chevron. A chevron is a V. So he had a V on his hand, just one V. But a corporal had two Vs. So in the army, for you to get corporal, you had to have one V, which is called lance corporal, and then you'd go to full corporal. But in the Air Force, there was private and then senior private, then to corporal. Now what they did later on, they created a rank of senior private in the army, and they created a rank of lance corporal in the Air Force. The difference is, when the senior private in the Air Force, who in basically was a lance corporal, went to the army, he was accommodated by private because he was being called lance corporal. So since he was a lance corporal, but in the Navy, in the Air Force then, he used to interact with, he used to be accommodated in the private's mess. Now, private mess, private is a constable. Private's mess, in the army it was called other ranks, which means that if you go to the military and you are not an NCO, you are not a commissioned officer or whatever, then you are any other rank, so you would stay there na askari tupu. So in the Air Force, I'm talking about this rank because it is important to talk about the attempted coup. So in the Air Force, the senior private used to interact with privates. But in the army, lance corporal used to interact with corporals. He used to be accommodated at the corporal's mess, and so on and so forth. The other thing I wanted to say is that him being basically a constable, although in reality is a senior, is an NCO, there is something in the military that they call CMC. CMC is the chairman of the mess committee. Now with every mess in the military, there is a committee for the mess. There is the other ranks mess, there is the NCO's mess, then there is the officers mess, then there is senior officers mess in the army. Now you find that him being the chairman of the mess committee, he was being an official. They used to have 5 or 7 officials. There was just like any committee, there was the chairman, secretary, treasurer, whatever. These were elective posts. So only the people who are popular were the ones who would be made CMC. So he was very much popular. And you know, those days, the Air Force had only 2 camps. The Air Force had a camp in Isili and Laikipia. So there were only 2 CMCs, chairman of mess committee, in the Air Force. That is in Isili, and that is in Isili, and that is in Laikipia. Those days, we did not have CDF. At Hurlingham, we only had army headquarters in the 70s. It was later on reintroduced by Moi, much later. So he was the CMC. What happened? There was a problem in the military, Air Force especially, whereby by the time we arrived in 1980, that is 2 years, or even 81, 3 years after Moi had taken over, it happened that promotions were being done strictly on tribal basis. If you were Kalenjin, could I say if you are Moi's tribe, you would really rise up the ranks. Really rise up the ranks. So there was that problem. There was that complaint about tribalism. There was also a problem about the feeding. You know, military people are just like students. They can go on strike because of poor meals and so on, so on, so on. So there used to be such problems. And again, you'll find that in the 80s, we had something that called military coups. Military coups. The military coups started with the generals. You'd find, like in Ghana, the government was overthrown by General Afrifa. Afrifa was in Ghana or Nigeria. We had, every time you could hear generals overthrowing governments. It reached a time when colonels started overthrowing governments. We had colonels overthrowing governments. I can say people like Lieutenant Colonel Anchepong of Ghana. He overthrew the government. You could hear people like Colonel Gaddafi of Libya. Although Colonel Gaddafi overthrew the government when he was a lieutenant, but immediately he took over in 1969, he promoted himself from lieutenant to colonel and stayed as a colonel forever. Why? Because he admired I've forgotten the name of the Egyptian colonel who had overthrown the Egyptian government. So you would even see the uniforms of Gaddafi wearing uniforms of field marshal, but the ranks on his shoulder were that one of a colonel, and he always was referred as Colonel Gaddafi. But as I was saying, government started being overthrown by generals. Then you reached a place where we had people like Brigadier Mutala. But then we then lowered down and went to, we now started hearing colonel overthrowing governments and so on and so forth. It even reached a stage where a flight lieutenant overthrew the Ghanaian government. Now, what is a flight lieutenant? To a person on the street who has no military knowledge, I would just say a flight lieutenant is, the nearest description is like a police pilot who is an inspector of police. An inspector of police who is a pilot. Now things were being, imagine, generals were overthrowing, like the inspector generals now overthrowing the government, and it reaches a time when now watu kama OCS ndio wana overthrow government. As if that was not enough, in Liberia, Master Sergeant Doe overthrew the government. Now these small people said, ala, kumbe kupindua serikali sio ma generals peke yake, even the smaller people. So a joke was made that in Kenya, if we overthrow the government, we are going to look for somebody of the lowest rank, of a constable. Now the person of a constable is a private. So that is when it was decided that a constable or a private be made the president. I was not there. I had just completed school, and there are so many versions of the story, because even other peoples have been mentioned, and they come up with you even wonder who recruited the other. Is he the one who recruited him, or it is him who recruited him? But then there is also another recruitment that we call girl recruitment. No, girl recruitment or girl seduction. It is hard for a girl to approach a boy and suggest friendship, but she can act in such a way that the boy would be the one approaching, whereas she's the one who placed herself in a position to be. So we can even say that so and so recruited so and so, but it becomes later that maybe it was a girl recruitment. The person placed himself in such a place that you appear to be the one recruiting him, whereas he's the one who recruited you. There is even some stories that various groups wanted to overthrow the government. I think that is one of the reasons why the coup failed. There are those reasons that the coup failed because there were so many groups. If all of them would, it's just like elections. If all the opposition gang up behind one candidate, then that candidate can take over from the government. But if you segment yourself, the government gets 40% and you are 6, you get 60%, so you get an average of 10. But if you would have recruited one person, that person would have gotten 60 and the government would have gotten 40. So one of the reasons why it is said that the 82 coup attempt failed was because there were several coup attempts. We do not know if it is Ochuka who approached the Odinga family or it is the Odinga family that approached Ochuka. And that is why I said that the girl can be seen to have been pursued, whereas she's the one who set the situation for the boy to pursue her. Now, what is documented is that somehow Ochuka and his team approached Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And Jaramogi was very clever in the way he talked. They approached him through somebody called Israel Agina. So they approached him through Israel Agina, who was the PA to Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. When they approached him, he did very little talking. He did very little talking, and he was very careful with whatever he said. The reason being, he was very careful with whatever he said. The reason being, he could, whatever he said would have been used against him. So they met and talked. When they not even talked, they talked to him. He just told them, "You have come to see me. What do you want to tell me?" Then they talked, and whatever talked. Then Jaramogi, the only thing Jaramogi told Kina HEZEKIAH Ochuka is that, "My children, I have heard you. My answers will come through him," referring to Israel Agina. And then he went up to the house. That is when a house, an office, a command center was hired along Gong Road, where everything was being done. It so happened that way until one day that HEZEKIAH Ochuka told. First of all, there was an airman. There was an airman who had a vehicle and was selling it at 40,000 shillings. He was selling the vehicle at 40,000 shillings, and Ochuka once joked to Raila and said that it is even possible that he was not that serious, but he told him, which president is going, who is this person who wants to be the president, and he even does not have a vehicle? Then Raila told him to look for a vehicle. He said, but I've got a colleague who is selling his vehicle at 40,000 shillings. When he said so, Raila took 40,000 in cash. Those days people used to carry in cash. Now even $1 million, I'll just say, give me your bank account number. And then when he was given, he gave Ochuka that money, and Ochuka bought the vehicle. Today, we are talking about Ochuka, but allow me to quickly say something about Raila. The intelligence had penetrated, special branch, our people had penetrated the coup plotters, and we had evidence that about implicating, there was a problem with implicating Jaramogi because of his age. It was seen that if he's arrested and he dies in jail, we were not ready for the repercussions. So in order to punish Jaramogi, the target used to be Raila. Now when they were targeting Raila, the intelligence and the special branch, the CID, and even the Attorney General's office, the prosecution department, agreed that they have to forgive some of these people so that they implicate Raila. But you see, the Attorney General, then Justice Guy Muli, was so fearful of talking to Moi. You know, you talk to Moi in such a way, you would be treated as a suspect. That one I've already uploaded that video, and that is why Raila was detained instead of being charged with treason. There was evidence, but because the Chief Justice was so scared of sharing the, you know, Moi had already received the information from the intelligence that on such and such a day, the Attorney General is coming with this and that proposal. For your information, Moi hated information which ambushed him. He usually liked getting prior information so that you pretend that you are mtukufu rais tufanyie hivi na hivi, and then hey, okay. But Moi wanted to get all the information early enough and then organize himself how to react on it. So that is the plan that was done. But Guy Muli, Justice Guy Muli, was afraid of telling Moi the truth because Moi would treat him as one of the coup plotters. And by the time he told Moi, it was too late, that the military people had already been convicted to hanging. So there was no way you could use them. Now, on that very same day, Ochuka took over the government, you know, those days we used to have only one TV and radio station. So Ochuka took over. He claimed to be the president, and he used to go around the street. Now he started off as a senior private. As he was going around and he could meet a military captain, he would tell him, bring that, I'm your boss, give me that rank, and then he would be a captain. Then when he goes around, he meets a major, he puts on that. By evening, when the coup failed, he already was putting on the ranks of a brigadier. And it is that time that everything went south. Leonard Mambo Botela has been saying what happened in Leonard Mambo has been saying what happened in a broadcasting house, which I disagree, and I think I've recorded 2 or 3 videos to that, so I can't repeat it here. What happened was, in short, Leonard Mambo, if you ask those people who used to work with Leonard Mambo during those days, they'll tell you that it is quite possible that Leonard Mambo was roped in. He knew about the coup plan even days before it happened. And it is not necessary that what happened is exactly how he's saying it. And again, he says that as he was announcing that he was General Mahmoud came and that thing, General Mahmoud told his family, and the family of General Mahmoud includes Duale. I'm sure if Duale opens up, he'll give a different version of what happened between General Mahmoud. I think General Mahmoud is still alive. Even General Mahmoud himself would say things a bit different from what Nani said. But when these people discovered that their plot was over, they went to the airport. No, not when they went to Isili, nowadays it's called Moi Air Base. They went to Moi Air Base, hijacked a plane. Now in the military, there was only the plane. It was known that they had hijacked the plane and they had hijacked 2 pilots. But there was a senior officer, I've forgotten his name, whose duty was to authorize for that plane to be shot down. Mtu kama siku yake haijafika. You know what happened? That military officer was in the bathroom bathing. You know, we didn't have time to bathe, we didn't have time to eat, we didn't have time in such a situation. Or they didn't have, let me not say we didn't. They didn't have that time. So anytime someone saw some lose 5 minutes, he would eat, or some lose 5 minutes, he would bathe, or some lose 5 minutes, he would sleep. So when he was in the bathroom bathing, and you know, bathroom shower, you can't hear a radio call coming. The officer who was supposed to authorize for the helicopter to be brought down was bathing, and he didn't hear the phone coming. And they were asking for permission for him to, they were asking for permission from him to shoot down the plane. By the time he came in, and you know that plane, that what do you call, cargo plane, had already crossed into Tanzania. I want to tell you that a plane from Nairobi to Garissa, which I used, or even a military plane from Nairobi to Garissa, which I used several times, it used to take, the plane used to take 1 hour. Okay, let's say it takes 1 hour. From Nairobi to Garissa. Now, 15 minutes from Isili, you are already in Arusha. So by the time this fellow came out of the bath and he was supposed to give authority, the plane was already inside Tanzania. And you cannot shoot even your own plane when it is an inch inside another country. So that is how kina Major Leshan, kina Ochuka were saved. And you know, the pilot called Major Leshan later came to be the Air Force commander. He rose up the ranks to become a Major General and rose to head the Air Force. Now, Ochuka went with the plane and he was given political asylum in Tanzania. He was given political asylum in Tanzania. And when he was in Tanzania, there were some political people who had been given political asylum, Tanzanians who had been given political asylum in Kenya. So Tanzania was uncomfortable with those people, and Kenya was uncomfortable with Ochuka and his friend in Tanzania. So an agreement was made between Moi and Nyerere, whereby the Tanzanians were arrested and taken to Tanzania, and Ochuka was arrested and brought to Kenya. That is when he was court-martialed, found to be guilty, and hanged and buried in I almost said Langata, and buried in Kamiti. But take it to the bank, the World Bank, that Ochuka is the last person to be hanged under the Penal Code of Kenya. Since then, nobody has ever been hanged. What usually happens, it is always commuted to life imprisonment, and he complete 20 or 30 years, he is released. There is even an argument that we should, because the the Constitution, 2010 Constitution, does not allow for killing of a human being unless it is in something like a police shootout. But hanging on firing squad or something was removed. Then people are arguing that it should be no judge should sentence anybody to hanging. But they do that because the judges do not take instructions from anybody, even the Chief Justice. So they decide you are to be hanged, and you just stay in a prison for decades, and then you are released. My viewers, that is what I had today for HEZEKIAH Ochuka. Thank you.